I won the lottery this year. $20 million. It just so happened that my 66th birthday was a week away. I had it all meticulously planned out. This incredible surprise was something I had longed to share with my children when they came over to celebrate. I had pictured it so clearly. After taxes, I would take what remained of the winnings and buy each of them a luxury home. One for my son, Brandon, and another for my daughter, Sienna. On top of that, I had planned to write each of them a check for $1 million. It was supposed to be perfect, but when my birthday finally arrived, I sat there, alone, at the dining table, staring at the spread of dishes I had prepared with so much care, waiting and waiting. By 10 o'clock that night, neither Brandon nor Sienna had shown up. I had called them both multiple times. Each attempt rang through to voicemail. No one answered. Not even a simple text. A creeping unease settled deep in my chest. Earlier that afternoon, around 3 or 4, Sienna had called. Her voice was rushed, distracted. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Work's insane today. I might not make it back in time, but I'll try." Just an hour later, Brandon had texted saying there was an issue with a project he was managing. "I'll be late, but I'll swing by as soon as I can," he'd promised. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. I told them both, work comes first. I understand, but now it was 10. And neither of them had even bothered to respond to the message I'd sent half an hour ago in our family WhatsApp group. Still marked unread. I slowly pushed back my chair, the sound of it scraping against the floor echoing louder than it should have in the empty room. My eyes drifted to the coffee table nearby. On it, 2 real estate contracts lay side by side, along with 2 neatly written checks, one house for each of them, $1 million in cash each. A surprise I had spent days preparing, a surprise I had spent an entire lifetime dreaming of giving. Some of my friends from yoga had gotten into the lottery craze recently, chattering nonstop about it. "Come on, Evelyn," they had said, "just try it. What's the harm?" I played along, half laughing, half skeptical. Never in my wildest imagination did I believe I'd actually win. The day the winning numbers were announced, I stared at my ticket in disbelief. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold my phone to double-check the numbers. When reality sank in, I was so overwhelmed. I didn't sleep a single second that night. I hadn't told anyone, not a soul. They always say sudden wealth should be handled discreetly, especially with family. So I chose the lump sum payout despite the 40% tax loss. It still left me with more than $10 million. I set aside $3 million for myself for my retirement, my health, and maybe, finally, a bit of peace. The rest? Divided equally between Sienna and Brandon. Somewhere between worrying and waiting, sleep crept up on me. I must have dozed off on the couch. I didn't even know how long I'd been asleep when my phone suddenly rang, jolting me awake. My heart skipped. The screen lit up with Sienna's name. I scrambled to answer. "Sienna. Mom? I'm so sorry." Her voice rushed, breathless. "Work was absolutely crazy today. I couldn't step away. It's already too late, so I'm just gonna head back to my apartment." "Don't wait up. Go to bed early, okay?" "Wait. Hold on." The line went dead before I could even respond. I glanced at the time. 11:47 p.m. Her workplace was miles away, and I knew how brutal her commute was. After she finished her internship years ago, I'd even rented her an apartment close to the office to save her the stress. Back then, it had felt like the right thing. A mother's job. I sat there for a long while staring at the dark screen of my phone. 10 minutes passed. Still, no word from Brandon. He's probably still caught up at work, I told myself. But the reassurance felt hollow. With a heavy sigh, I dragged myself off the couch. My back ached as I carefully wrapped each untouched dish from the dinner table in plastic wrap, one by one, and slid them into the fridge. The real estate contracts and the checks, I tucked those into the drawer of my bedside table. My hands lingered on the drawer for a moment longer than necessary, then closed it shut. By the time everything was cleaned, the lights turned off, and the house fell quiet again. It was nearly 1 in the morning. Just like that, The birthday I had so eagerly anticipated was over. The next morning, sunlight streamed stubbornly through the blinds, but my phone remained silent. Not a single message. Not even a belated birthday text from Brandon or Sienna. I opened the family group chat. It's Saturday. Come home for dinner. I have a surprise for you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the send button, wondering if it was even worth it. Then I hit send anyway. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. Nothing. Sighing. I slipped on my walking shoes and headed outside for a stroll, hoping the fresh air might help clear the heaviness sitting in my chest. As I turned the corner of my street, I spotted my neighbor, Grace, walking her little corgi. She waved, smiling brightly. "You're usually out bright and early," she chuckled. "What took you so long today?" I forced a polite smile. "Oh, just a late night." She tilted her head knowingly. "Let me guess. You spent the whole day yesterday cooking and wore yourself out, huh?" I didn't answer. She sighed with that familiar mix of affection and exasperation. "Evelyn, I've told you before. Book a nice dinner at a restaurant. Less stress, less hassle. But no, you insist on making 3 different meals because Brandon likes spicy, Sienna likes sweet and outer, and little Emily needs something healthy for kids." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You honestly think a restaurant can't handle that?" Her words caught me. Somewhere deep inside they stung, because for the first time, I actually wondered if she was right. My entire life had revolved around my children. Before my divorce. After my divorce. For decades. Had I ever, even once, put myself first? Before I could sink deeper into that uncomfortable thought, a sharp, cutting voice sliced through the morning air. "Oh, Grace, don't act like she's some poor self-sacrificing saint," sneered Nora, another neighbor I'd never particularly gotten along with. Her tone was dripping with venom. "She just loves showing off, always bragging about how devoted Brandon and Sienna are. What a joke." I turned slowly toward the voice. There she stood, arms crossed, lips curling in disdain, eyes scanning me from head to toe like she was appraising damaged goods. "Not even a decent piece of jewelry on you," she scoffed. "Makes me wonder how you've been treating yourself all these years." I took a steady breath. "I don't have time for this today, Nora." Grace frowned. "Nora, that's enough." But Nora stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Oh no, I waited here all morning just to do you a favor. You're going to listen." I narrowed my eyes. "What favor?" She smirked, pulling her phone out of her pocket. "Last night was my grandson's birthday. We had dinner at this fancy place downtown. And guess what? I saw the most ridiculous thing." I shook my head. "Nora, seriously, I'm not interested. Just watch." She shoved the phone into my hands. I glanced at it, meaning to push it back, but the second my eyes landed on the screen, my entire body locked up. A video. A woman in a red dress, her hair styled in an elegant chignon, standing by the entrance of a banquet hall, laughing, smiling, greeting guests warmly. Vanessa, David's mistress. Or rather, David's wife now. Standing beside her, arms linked, was David. Looking far too happy for a man who used to swear to me that she meant nothing. But it wasn't just them. The camera panned, and there he was. Brandon, standing next to David, chatting, laughing. Behind them, 2 large banners stood tall. "Happy 25th wedding anniversary, David and Vanessa. Happy birthday, Vanessa." My breath caught. My legs trembled. The video wasn't done. A small figure darted into frame. Emily. My granddaughter, her tiny hand clutching Vanessa's as she beamed up at her. "Grandma Vanessa, you look so pretty, way prettier and nicer than my other grandma. I want you to be my real grandma. Next week is our preschool sports day. Can you and Grandpa come watch me?" The screen went dark. A deafening silence roared in my ear. My hands trembled as I slowly handed the phone back to Nora, my fingers barely able to grip. My mouth was dry. I opened it, but no sound came out. "Oh, I'm not finished," Nora sneered, folding her arms with theatrical flair. "You should have seen Brandon. Bought that old witch." Her lips curled. A solid gold bracelet. Looked like it cost at least 10 grand. I overheard his wife bragging about it in the restroom. on the phone with her mother. And guess what else? She clicked her tongue. He got David an entire crate of Hennessy, not the cheap stuff. The expensive kind. I stood there frozen, my legs like concrete blocks, my heart pounding like a war drum. Nora wasn't done. And your precious Sienna? Her voice dropped into a vicious mocking whisper. Oh, don't even get me started. She gave Vanessa a full gold jewelry set, necklace, earrings, rings, the whole deal. She kept calling her mom like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Didn't you always brag about how devoted they are to you? Strange, I didn't see you getting even a crumb. Stop it, Nora, Grace hissed, grabbing her by the arm. You've made your point. But Nora yanked her arm away. No, she needs to hear this. She needs to understand exactly what kind of ungrateful, backstabbing wolves she raised, always scrimping and saving for them, selling your own house to help them buy theirs. What a joke. She shook her head in mock pity. All that, just so you could fool yourself into believing they cared. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Hard. Unforgiving. I felt my knees weaken, the ground threatening to tilt beneath me. I turned away, blindly staggering in the direction of home. My steps were unsteady, my vision blurred, my breath came shallow and rapid, like I was drowning in air. A bitter, metallic taste filled my mouth. Somewhere between clenched teeth, I realized I'd bitten my lower lip so hard it had started to bleed. As soon as I crossed the threshold of my house, I collapsed onto the couch. I don't even remember sitting. One moment I was at the door, and the next I was crumpled, trembling. The floodgates broke. The tears that had been threatening all morning spilled over. My shoulders shook as I buried my face in my hands, as if somehow pressing hard enough could contain the tsunami of anguish crashing through me. But it was useless. No matter how tight I squeezed my eyes shut, the past came crawling out of the corners of my mind. Relentless, merciless, memories, sharp, cutting, ones I had spent decades trying to bury. My marriage to David Carter, a disaster from the very beginning. By the time I turned 40, I had already abandoned any naive ideas about love. I divorced him, never remarried, never even considered it. David was 6 years older than me. We met through a mutual friend. Back then, he seemed like a good man, tall, clean-cut, with this air of quiet stability. He worked as an analyst in the municipal office. Solid job, bright future. I was only 24, working as a proofreader at a publishing house, not even a full-time employee. My parents thought he was perfect, respectable, dependable, smart. A man who can help your brother's career too, they'd said. And like the obedient daughter I was back then, I agreed. I didn't know him. Not really. I didn't know anything about his past, his secrets, his heart. Only, I would find out. Later. Far too late. David had never married before me, because, once upon a time, he had been deeply, hopelessly in love. A love so consuming, it left him unable to fully give himself to anyone else. Marrying me? It was never about love. It was convenience, practicality. By the time I understood that, it was already irreversible. A year after we met, we married. Ours wasn't a fiery romance. It wasn't even particularly affectionate. It was stable, respectful, at least on the surface. I convinced myself that was enough. Not every marriage needed fireworks. Stability meant safety. By the third spring of our marriage, I gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, Brandon and Sienna. Motherhood hit me like a tidal wave. 2 newborns, constant crying, sleepless nights, a body still broken from childbirth. I was drowning, desperate for help. I asked David if his mother, Margaret, could come stay with us for a while. Every time I brought it up, he dodged. Dad's not well. Mom's busy. She just can't right now. Weeks passed, then months. Margaret never came. Meanwhile, my publishing job waited and waited until it didn't. When I failed to return, they gave my position away. I was heartbroken. But what could I do? Helpless. Cornered. The first birthday party for the twins rolled around. No sign of Margaret. Not even a call. Not even a card. It was the first time I felt something sharp twist deep inside my chest. Something sour. Something bitter. That night, after the guests left, David finally sat me down. His face was heavy with something that wasn't quite guilt, but close. "She had a bad fall," he said, avoiding my eyes. "While cleaning. Hurt her back. She's been recovering, that's why she hasn't been around. Didn't want to worry us." For a moment, guilt washed over me. Maybe I had been unfair. But then, the truth. A week later, David's aunt visited to see the babies. Kind, sharp-eyed, clever in a way that made me instinctively trust her. I pulled her aside. "How bad is Margaret's injury? Should I arrange a hospital in Portland? Does she need extra care?" She hesitated. Her eyes flickered, her lips pressed together as if battling an internal war. Then, a sigh, a long, weary sigh. "Evelyn," she murmured, "there's no injury." I blinked. "What?" She lowered her voice, glancing around. "I wasn't going to say anything, but every time I visit, I see you breaking your back raising these kids alone. It just doesn't sit right with me." I felt something cold coil in my stomach. "Then where is she?" "Working," she said simply. "As a full-time nanny." The world tilted. "For who?" She gave me a look I would never forget, equal parts pity and warning. "David's boss. His wife needed help. Travels a lot. So, David sent his mother to take care of their kids." My mouth went dry. My ears rang. "So, she's taking care of his boss's children, but not her own grandchildren." She nodded, grim. "That's right." My lips trembled. I could barely force the words out. "Why?" Her gaze softened, and she exhaled. "You should keep an eye on David. Make sure no one takes him away." Her words sank into me like a knife. A shiver crawled down my spine. Then, with a gentle pat on my arm, she walked away, leaving me standing there, frozen, breathless, unraveling. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, numb, hollow, the edges of my world unraveling one stitch at a time. That night I tossed and turned. Sleep evaded me, slipping just out of reach like a cruel joke. I kept replaying her words in my head. Keep an eye on David. Make sure no one steals him away. What did that mean? Was it just about the job? Or was it something more? The next morning after David left for work, something shifted inside me. A line had been crossed. I found myself walking toward his study, a room I rarely entered, out of respect, out of trust, or maybe out of fear of what I might find. The study was simple. 2 bookshelves lined the walls. His desk sat beneath the window, and a locked cabinet rested quietly in the corner like a sealed vault of secrets. I sat in his chair, staring at the closed drawers for a long time, debating. Then slowly I reached out. The first drawer opened easily. Inside were the usual items: a few pens, his office badge, a calculator, some folders, and a small black and white photograph buried at the very bottom. I pulled it out. 5 people stood together in the photo. My eyes were drawn immediately to the young woman at the center. She wore a white floral blouse with delicate ruffled sleeves. Her long hair was braided into 2 neat plaits. Her smile was soft, radiant, even. And standing right beside her, closer than anyone else, was David. I didn't need anyone to tell me what I was seeing. There's a kind of intimacy that exists between people who have been in love for a long time. You can't fake it. You can't hide it. Not even in a photograph. My hands trembled as I flipped the photo over. In the bottom right corner, delicate handwriting danced across the paper. Bound by her love buried deep. April 19th, 1969. My vision blurred. My breath caught. The date, 1969. That would have been David's final year of college. My stomach twisted into knots. I scanned the room, my gaze locking onto the cabinet in the corner. Slowly, mechanically, I stood and walked over to it, running my fingers along the spines of his books. One caught my attention. How the Steel Was Tempered, a strange title to own, and yet, as I tilted it, something shifted. A small key slipped out from between the pages. My hands trembled as I bent down. inserting the key into the cabinet lock. It clicked open with an unnervingly casual ease. Inside were letters, dozens of them, yellowed with age, edges curled, bundled together with neat strands of twine. I pulled the top bundle free, sat back at the desk, and untied the knot. The handwriting was unmistakably feminine, soft, looping strokes. The first letter opened with a greeting that burned itself into my memory forever. My dearest David, her name signed at the bottom. Venice. Page after page, I read their secret history, a love story that spanned more than a decade. They grew up in the same small town, left for the same university, navigated young adulthood side by side. They leaned on each other, supported each other, eventually fell in love. But before Vanessa left for college, her family had already arranged a marriage for her. A fiancé, someone from a good family, someone with money, someone with status. She had agreed, dutiful daughter that she was. Every month her fiancé sent letters, sometimes money for her living expenses. But between the obligations, the distance, and the weight of expectations, her love with David grew in the shadows. When they graduated, most of their classmates returned home. Vanessa was married off, securing a job as a French teacher at a prestigious private school. Meanwhile, David, after multiple failed attempts, was finally accepted into a graduate program at a university up north. One married, the other left. But the letters never stopped. When I was newly pregnant with the twins, I found one dated to that time. David, I'm exhausted. Work and the baby are draining me. Bruce is always away. Barely even notices when I come or go. Sometimes I just sit here crying, wondering how I'll survive. Your letters, they're the only things keeping me going. My hands clenched, crumpling the paper slightly. Another letter. I'm so grateful to your mother, Margaret. She's been such a lifesaver helping with my daughter. She's practically a second mom to me now. I almost want to call her Mom, but I don't know in what way. A sick wave of nausea churned in my stomach. I gripped the edge of the desk until my knuckles went white. Then, one more. This one gutted me. You're barely making $1,500 a month, but you still send me $500 in secret. If your wife ever found out, she'd throw a fit. You said she's pregnant with twins. The only thing I've ever seen give birth to two at once is my dog. I can't even imagine how huge she must have gotten. The thought alone is horrifying. I feel guilty, but I can't help but laugh. A sound escaped my lips. Something broken. Something animal. I clutched my chest as if that could stop it from shattering into pieces. That evening, when David walked through the door, I was waiting. The letters were laid out on the coffee table like an exhibit at a crime scene. He froze. I didn't even wait for him to speak. I grabbed the stack, hurled it at him. How long? I screamed. My voice cracked from the sheer force of it. How long have you been lying to me? His face remained expressionless, cold, detached, like a stranger watching someone else's tragedy. Are you done? He asked, voice flat, irritated. I staggered back as if he'd slapped me. Are you serious? Are you done? That's all you have to say. He sighed like I was an inconvenience. They're just letters. Nothing happened. If it bothers you that much, I'll stop writing them. My hands trembled. My vision swam. My knees buckled beneath the crushing weight of those words. But I didn't even get the chance to collapse. From the nursery, crying. The twins, both of them, awake, hungry, wailing. I wiped my eyes, hands shaking. I stumbled toward the kitchen. Formula. Where was the formula? I froze. Empty. The can was empty. A memory snapped into focus. I had reminded David, every single day for the past week, that we were running low on formula. I had asked him that very morning to pick some up on his way home. He had forgotten. Or maybe he hadn't cared. Something snapped. I stormed back to his study. The door was locked. With one swift, furious kick, I sent it flying open. And there he was, sitting at his desk, gently tracing his fingers over the photo of Vanessa, like some precious relic. His expression, soft, longing, tender, everything he had never shown me. When he noticed me, his hands froze. I marched forward, ripped the photo from his hands, and tore it, shredded it, into a million worthless pieces. The scraps fluttered to the floor like dead leaves. "David Carter, you are a lying, heartless bastard," I shrieked. "I want a divorce." For the first time since I had known him, he froze. Then, like a machine rebooting, his face contorted into something monstrous. Rage overtook him. You're insane," he bellowed. A hysterical, irrational shrew. He shoved me hard. I wasn't prepared. My lower back slammed against the sharp edge of the desk. A flash of white-hot pain shot through my spine. I gasped. The air was knocked out of me. My vision blurred. Somewhere through the fog I saw him hesitate, just for a second. Then he turned, walked out, slammed the door behind him. The only sound left in the house was the broken, helpless cries of my babies echoing through the dark. I don't remember how I survived that night. It was a blur of chaos, pain, and the relentless cries of my children. Thin, desperate, piercing through the walls and through my skull like needles. Their tiny voices trembled in the air, full of need, while I was crumbling. There was no choice. I had to pull myself together, clutching my bruised lower back. I stumbled to the kitchen. No formula, no food for the babies. Panic twisted in my chest. What was I supposed to do? I searched the cupboards. Rice, oatmeal, anything. My hands shook as I grabbed the pot, poured water, and tried to make something, anything, that would fill their tiny, hungry bellies. I stood there, stirring oatmeal with one arm, while rocking one crying baby against my shoulder. Just when Sienna finally drifted off to sleep, her brother's cries would rise, shrill and insistent. I'd switch, rock, feed, console, over and over. My entire body ached. My mind was splintered, scattered into fragments. And through it all, I hated him. I hated David Carter with every fiber of my being. I hated the woman in that torn photograph. I hated the suffocating betrayal tangled around me like chains. I wanted to walk out that night. Just leave. Run. Vanish. But when I looked down at the tiny faces clinging to me, I couldn't. I simply couldn't. I stayed. I stayed for them, and for years after. I fought tooth and nail for them. The next day, when the sun dared to rise, I dragged myself into David's office at the municipal building. I handed the receptionist an envelope, a letter addressed directly to his supervisor. Inside, I had written out every sordid detail of his inappropriate relationship with Vanessa. I wasn't sure what response I expected. Maybe, just maybe, someone would care. They didn't. A few days later, I ran into his supervisor at the corner market. I approached him, hands trembling. His lips curved into a disapproving frown. "You really shouldn't bring your family drama into the workplace, Evelyn," he said. His tone was heavy with condescension, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. "Whatever disagreements you and David have, handle them at home. Don't tarnish his reputation." For a moment I stood there, utterly dumbfounded, staring at him, staring at the world as it closed ranks around men like David, protecting them, shielding them, pretending their sins were simply minor inconvenience. When I went to the local women's support center, hoping for guidance, I was met with half-hearted nods and sympathetic but useless advice. "Well, he didn't actually bring the other woman home, did he?" one counselor asked. "It's just letters. Not really cheating, is. Try to endure, focus on the children. Things will get better." Endure, that word wrapped itself around my throat like a noose. I looked at my life and realized with horrifying clarity, every single door was locked. My parents? My father was livid when I told him I wanted a divorce. "Absolutely not," he roared. "Every woman goes through this. You think marriage is some fairy tale. You endure, you hold the family together. Stop embarrassing us. You have no job, no income," he spat. "How do you expect to survive? Grow up, Evelyn." My mother? She wrung her hands, her eyes filled with tears. But she never took my side. She whispered behind his back, "Try to bear it, for the children, for their sake." But never once did she say, "I will help you leave." No one did. And David? When I brought up divorce, he simply ignored me, walked away, moved out into a dormitory near City Hall. He stopped coming home regularly, visiting only once every 10 days like a guest in his own family. The twins were too young to understand. They crawled around the house, babbling, giggling, oblivious to the black hole growing between their parents. So I swallowed it, swallowed my rage, swallowed my humiliation, swallowed my despair, every day, every hour, every breath. 7 years of suffocating silence, of being invisible, of being disposable, until one day, the final straw. I found a letter David had written to Vanessa, tucked deep inside his briefcase. It had been returned to sender. Vanessa had moved. For a brief moment, I felt this strange, ugly satisfaction that fate had intervened. But then, I read it. Use the money I sent to buy that new fully automated washing machine you were talking about. You deserve it. You shouldn't have to scrub clothes by hand anymore. I stared at the words, my hands trembling. A washing machine. For her. For me. For us. For our family. Nothing. In the dead of winter, I was still outside scrubbing my children's clothes by hand, my fingers numb, cracked, bleeding. I had begged for a second-hand machine. He told me, it's not in the budget right now, but he found the money for Vanessa. I don't even remember walking into the living room. All I remember is shoving the letter into his face as he stepped through the door that evening. Explain this right now. He tried. Gaslighting, twisting, dodging. Why are you so dramatic? It's just money. It's just helping a friend. A friend. The argument escalated. Voices raised. Furniture overturned. A vase flew past my head, shattering against the wall. In that moment, something primal overtook me. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. And then, I called the local news station. I told them everything. I told them how David Carter, an officer at the municipal office, was sending money to his mistress, how he neglected his wife and children, how his own mother was working as a nanny for that mistress's family. The story exploded. It spread like wildfire. It reached City Hall. It reached the local government. It spread further than I ever imagined. David's career was obliterated overnight. His upcoming promotion? Gone. His carefully crafted image? Shattered. The transfers and cushy job he had lined up at the state level vanished in an instant. As younger, more qualified officials swept into City Hall, David found himself demoted, forgotten, cast aside. The once promising future he built for himself, reduced to dust. And only then, only when he had nothing left to lose, did he finally agree to a divorce. It took 2 months of brutal, relentless negotiations before the divorce was finalized. David fought me over everything, every penny, every asset, every piece of furniture, even custody of the children. But it wasn't because he wanted them. No, it was because he wanted to win. If you want a divorce, he snarled one evening, slamming his fists against the table, then fine. But I'm keeping Brandon. I stared at him, stunned. My mouth opened, but no words came. Brandon? Just Brandon? Not both children. Not even a discussion. He had chosen. I swallowed hard and nodded. Fine. Take him. When it came to money, though, I was ruthless. I threatened to leak even more. Everything I knew about him and Vanessa, to the press, to the community, to his workplace. I promised to bury him in scandal until there was nothing left of his career, his reputation, or his pride. In the end, I threw out a number, $50,000. It wasn't even about the exact amount he'd sent Vanessa over the years. I would never know the full number. I didn't care. I wanted him to suffer. At the time, David's salary was around $2,000 a month. $50,000 wasn't impossible, but it wasn't pocket change either. If he refused, I would destroy him. He paced like a caged animal for days. His pride wouldn't allow him to borrow from friends. His reputation was already hanging by a thread. In the end, the only thing left was his parents' house. He mortgaged it. When he handed me that check, his hands were trembling, his eyes bloodshot, hollow, burned with a hatred so deep it could have set the world on fire. If looks could kill, I would have died 1,000 times over in that moment. The house we had shared, the one we'd built a life in, technically belonged to David, as it had been purchased before our marriage. I didn't fight for it, but everything inside, every plate, every piece of furniture, every curtain rod, every single item down to the battered old stew pot that had been patched twice. I took it all. I sold every last thing at the flea market. Then, with Sienna in my arms and Brandon left behind with his father's parents, I walked away. From that day forward, David Carter and I shared only one connection: the occasional handoff of our children, like parcels exchanged on a street corner. When my father found out I had actually gone through with the divorce, his fury shook the walls. "You've embarrassed me. You've embarrassed this family," he roared over the phone. "How dare you disobey me like this?" He never visited me again. Not once. My mother? She would sneak over in secret from time to time. Quiet, nervous, but she never offered more than sighs, hand-wringing, and teary whispers of disappointment. She never asked me how I planned to survive. Never asked if I was okay. Never once said, "I'm proud of you." I was disappointed, but I was done begging for love that was never going to come. The road ahead was uncertain, difficult, unforgiving, but at least I was free. Free of that suffocating, rotting marriage. Free of being the discarded extra in someone else's love story. At least now, I could breathe. The first thing I did was buy a small apartment. About 650 square feet. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand bed, a table, a few chairs, enough to get by. I transferred Sienna to a new preschool nearby. And then, I started plotting. Not just my future, revenge. I sat down at my tiny dining table, pulled out a crisp piece of stationery, and penned a letter to Thomas Miller, Vanessa's husband. "Dear Thomas, I just wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude. Your wife is a remarkable woman. For years she has been the pillar of support for my ex-husband, David. Her kindness, her unwavering loyalty, and her ability to keep secrets are truly commendable. I only hope you realize how lucky you are to have a wife so devoted." I sent it with no return address. 3 weeks later, word spread like wildfire. Thomas filed for divorce. Immediately, he stormed into the courthouse in tears, brandishing a stack of the very same love letters I had once cried over. The evidence was undeniable. Unlike what I had experienced, no one told him to endure. No one dismissed it as just letters. The court sided with him without hesitation. Neighbors whispered. Friends turned their backs. Her colleagues sneered. Vanessa's once pristine reputation shattered overnight. She lost her job teaching French at the private school. Accusations swirled. Whether or not she actually accepted bribes from parents, as some rumors suggested, I didn't know. I didn't care. Only Thomas and fate would know the truth. I didn't follow what happened to her after that. I didn't need to. I was busy. Busy surviving. Busy rebuilding. Busy finally living. I took a job as a merchandise coordinator at Global Threads Limited, an apparel export company. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. I had to learn everything from scratch: logistics, international shipping, contracts. I learned French. I learned trade law. I worked days, nights, weekends, all while raising Sienna alone. Every time I felt like giving up, I reminded myself, I am free. 5 years later, I was promoted to head of European sales operations. Me, a woman, everyone had written off as disposable, replaceable, worthless. And David, he never moved up again. After the scandal, his career stagnated. He remained a low-level clerk at the municipal office until the day he retired, filing papers, forgotten, powerless. Eventually, he married Vanessa, took out another loan to throw her a lavish wedding, desperate, perhaps to prove to the world that their relationship had meant something, that it hadn't all been for nothing. But if there was anyone who paid the highest price for that marriage, it wasn't him. It was Brandon. Anytime Brandon and Vanessa fought, David sided with her every single time. I will never forget. That Christmas Eve, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, there stood Brandon. His clothes were rumpled, his shoes half untied. His tiny hands were numb from the cold. His lips were chapped, trembling. His backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, stained with mud. The moment he saw me, he broke. "Mom, I don't want to go back. Please, please. I hate them. I hate them. Please don't make me go back." He collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard I could barely make out his words. Through his gasping cries, I pieced together the story. Vanessa had made roast beef ribs for dinner. The smell filled the house. Brandon, unable to resist, snuck a piece when no one was looking. Vanessa caught him. Without a second thought, she slapped him hard. When David came home and heard about it, did he scold her? No. He scolded Brandon for stealing food. Vanessa, emboldened, ordered him to stand outside, in the freezing cold, to reflect on his behavior. Shivering, humiliated, heartbroken, Brandon had run to his room, shoved his belongings into his backpack, and fled. "Mom, can I stay with you? Can I never go back?" I pulled him into my arms, held him as tight as I could, felt his little heartbeat pounding against my chest. "You're home now, sweetheart. You're home." From that day forward, Brandon never went back to his father's house. Not even once. He flat out refused. And you know what? Vanessa was thrilled. Oh, I have no doubt about that. With Brandon gone, she had one less reminder of David's past life, one less tie to me, to the marriage she'd helped destroy. I'm not sure what she told David to justify it, but the man who had fought me tooth and nail to keep our son suddenly didn't resist. No protests, no negotiation. He simply packed up Brandon's things and sent them over to me, neatly boxed, as if discarding an old unwanted item. At first, David sent over child support checks like clockwork. For 2 years, they arrived every month. No letters, no calls, just money. Cold, silent money. And then, one day, the checks stopped coming. Just like that. No warning, no explanation, no goodbye. That was it. I raised both my children, Brandon and Sienna, on my own. Completely. No help. No support. Just me. I taught them right from wrong. I worked double shifts to pay for their schooling. I skipped meals to save for their futures. I bought them cars when they graduated, helped them put down payments on their homes. Everything I had, everything I worked for, it went to them. And now, all these years later, after everything, they betrayed me, just like their father did. The realization sank in like ice water. It seeped into my bones, cold and unforgiving. It didn't matter how many sleepless nights I'd endured, how many sacrifices I'd made, how many birthdays, holidays, or milestones I'd spent cooking, saving, stretching myself thin to give them everything. It didn't matter. None of it mattered. I felt hollow, like I'd cried my last tear that night. My body couldn't produce another dry. I sat there, staring out the window as the sky darkened. The daylight disappeared, swallowed by creeping shadows. I forced myself to move, slowly, one foot after the other. My legs trembled as I made my way to the bedroom. I lay down on the bed, my arms splayed out, limp. I stared at the ceiling, numb, empty. A sound broke the silence. Keys turning in the lock. The door swung open. Familiar voices floated in. "Mom, we're back." Sienna's voice called. I didn't move. Another voice followed. Brandon's. Confused. "Huh? Mom's not home? Didn't she tell us to come for dinner this morning? Why hasn't she even cooked?" A heavy sigh. "Sienna, who knows? She's been getting more and more annoying these past couple of years. Always so emotional. Every time I'm around her, it's like suffocating. Honestly, it's just so much easier being with Vanessa." "Keep your voice down," Brandon hissed. "If Mom hears you, she'll be upset." "So what?" she shot back, irritation dripping from every word. "Are we really supposed to never see Dad again just to make her happy? He's still our father, isn't he?" The words were knives. I lay perfectly still, my body cold, my eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Then came a smaller, brighter voice. "Emily, my granddaughter. Grandma, are you playing hide and seek with us? I found you." A sudden hush fell over the living room. Moments later, Hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. The bedroom door creaked open. The light flicked on. They froze. All of them. Brandon, rooted to the spot. His lips parted, like he wanted to speak but couldn't. His gaze flicked to my face, my tear-streaked, hollow face lying stiff on the bed, and guilt flooded his features. Mom. His voice was a whisper, fragile, terrified. Sienna lingered in the doorway, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her expression was unreadable, conflicted, angry, defensive, ashamed, a swirl of all of them. The air felt heavier than lead. After what felt like forever, Sienna stepped forward. Kneeling by the bed, she reached for my hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, I'm sorry, she murmured. We were just so busy yesterday. That's why we couldn't come. You're not mad at us, right? I stared at her, said nothing. She squirmed under my silence. Her fingers tightened around mine. I had to work overtime. I didn't have a choice. You know this is an important time for my career. Yeah, Mom. Same. Brandon jumped in quickly, as if grasping for any lifeline. We really did have to work. But we're here now, right? We came to celebrate today. Come on. Let's have some cake. I looked at them, really looked, and all I could see was David. The way they twisted the truth, the way they dressed their betrayal in excuses, their voices, their eyes, their forced smiles. It was him, all over again. Had I been fighting the impossible all along? Had I been pouring love, time, and my entire existence into a battle I was destined to lose? Grandma, I want cake, Emily chirped, tugging at my arm. Her tiny hands were warm and soft, almost pulling me up. Brandon knelt down, quickly slipping my slippers onto the floor for me, helping me sit up. His voice was rushed, desperate to fill the space. Mom, Emily's been so excited all day to celebrate your birthday. She kept saying how much she missed you. The moment her dance class ended, I brought her straight here. They half led, half dragged me to the dining table. On it sat a tiny 6-inch cartoon cake, a cheaply decorated frozen cake with a plastic Elsa figurine on top. My granddaughter's favorite. I smiled. But not because I was happy. It was because in that moment, sitting there staring at that tiny cake, I realized something terrifying. I had been a fool, an absolute fool. For over 30 years, a memory surfaced unbidden and sharp. That night, that awful freezing winter night, after the fight with David, the empty can of formula, the wails of my baby. I had stood in that tiny kitchen, back bruised, hands trembling, stirring oatmeal with one arm while cradling my crying child with the other. I had wanted to leave. I had wanted to walk away, but I didn't. I had stayed, for them. I had fought, for them. I had built my entire life around them. And now they had gone to another woman's birthday party. They had brought her gold bracelets, liquor, a full jewelry set. And for me, the only birthday cake I got was whatever my 5-year-old granddaughter happened to pick out. Suppressing the storm inside me, I pulled out a chair and sat down. Then, in a voice that was calm, controlled, and deathly steady, I said, "Sit down. I have something to say." Brandon and Sienna exchanged a quick glance, nervous, unsure, but they both said. Emily, oblivious to the tension hanging in the air like a loaded gun, swung her little legs beneath the table, her eyes fixed on the Elsa figurine perched atop the cake. I folded my hands neatly in front of me. My gaze swept across my children. No, across the strangers sitting before me, before I spoke. "You didn't come yesterday," I said, my voice quiet, but sharp as broken glass, "because you were at their anniversary party, weren't you?" The air shifted. Just like that, the facade began to crumble. Sienna's brows pulled together instantly. "Mom, what are you even talking about?" she asked cautiously, her tone defensive, strained. Why would you think that?" I kept my eyes on her, unblinked. "Don't play games, ease me, Sienna. If you wanted to attend their celebration, you could have just told me. There was no need to lie about working late and leave me sitting here until midnight." Her complexion drained of color. Her lips trembled, but she quickly pressed them together to suppress it. Brandon looked down, unable to meet my gaze. His fingers fidgeted with the edge of the table, guilt flickering all over his face like a neon sign he couldn't switch off. Silence stretched between us, thick, suffocating. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Sienna broke. Her eyes welled with tears, her lips trembled, and she moved from across the table to sit beside me. Her hands gripped mine tightly. "Mom, let the past go, please," she choked out, her tears spilling onto my skin like acid. "You can't keep holding on to this. Dad has connections, resources. He can help me. He can help Brandon. Why should we keep struggling when we could just ask him for help?" She sobbed openly now. "Mom, we've had it hard too. You always act like we owe you everything. But we're adults. We have our own lives, our own struggles. Can't you try to understand us?" Her tears weren't just sadness, they were laced with frustration, with resentment, as though I had wronged her. "I'm getting married next year," she continued between ragged breath. "Ethan and I are building a future together. Dad promised. He promised to help get him a job at the municipal office. Mom, if I can't rely on Dad, then who am I supposed to rely on? You." I stared. There it was. The truth. Naked. Ugly. Bitter. I stared at my daughter. This daughter I had nursed through fevers, cheered through school plays, stayed awake for when she cried through heartbreaks, and I realized I didn't know her at all. Brandon cleared his throat, speaking softly but firmly. "Mom, Sienna's right. I know you're upset, but we're here now, aren't we? Look, we came today. We brought Emily. Isn't that what matters?" But Sienna wasn't done. Her voice grew sharper, her words harder, slicing into the air like knives. "You know, I've been holding this in for a long time, but someone has to say it." She inhaled shakily. "If you hadn't caused that scene at City Hall, if you hadn't ruined Dad's career, none of this would have happened." My breath caught. "What did you just say?" "It's true," she snapped, her hands curling into fists. "If you had just endured, like other women do, Dad wouldn't have lost everything. He wouldn't have ended up stuck filing papers in some back office for the rest of his life. We wouldn't have had to grow up struggling. If you hadn't insisted on leaving, if you hadn't made everything explode, maybe Vanessa never would have replaced you." The silence that followed was deafening, crushing. Even Brandon seemed stunned. "Sienna, stop." But she whipped around to face him. "Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong, Brandon." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with conviction. "Mom, the past is the past. Why are you still holding on to it like a grudge? Why can't you move on? Why can't you stop drowning in your own bitterness? Dad is still our father. No matter what you think of him, no matter what happened between you two, that's never going to change." My heart didn't break. No, it shattered, splintered, obliterated. I looked at her, at both of them, and it was like looking through a fogged window. Faces I no longer recognized, voices I no longer knew. Strangers, two strangers. My hands trembled, but not from sadness, not anymore. From clarity. I stood, slowly, my chair scraping back. I pointed toward the door. My voice was eerily calm, deadly, steady. "Get out. Both of you." Brandon's mouth opened. "Mom, get out." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Every syllable was a knife. "I don't have children like you. Not anymore." For a moment, no one moved. Then Sienna pushed to her feet, her face hard, cold, controlled. Her voice was flat. "Fine. We should all take some time to cool off anyway. I won't be coming back for a while." She reached for the cake on the table. "Emily, let's go. We'll have the cake at Auntie's place." Emily hesitated. Her wide, confused eyes bounced between me and her mother. But I wanted to eat with Grandma." "Emily, let's go," Sienna snapped, her voice sharp, offering no room for argument. Slowly the little girl slid off her chair, reaching for her mother's hand. Together they headed toward the door. Brandon lingered, hovering, torn, restless. "Mom, I'll talk to Sienna, okay? We'll come back and figure this out." "No, you won't. Just give us a couple days, yeah? We'll come back." He grabbed his coat and rushed after them. As the door swung shut behind them, I heard Emily's small, innocent voice. Does Grandma not want us anymore? And then, Sienna's deliberate, venom-laced reply. That's right, you don't have a grandma anymore. Emily's voice rose, chipper and bright, oblivious. Yay, that means Vanessa is my real grandma now. Tomorrow, I'll ask Grandpa and Grandma Vanessa to come to my school's sports day. The door closed. Silence swallowed everything. I stood there, staring at the empty doorway, for a very, very long time. My mouth tasted like metal, blood. I had bitten the inside of my cheek without realizing, but I would get used to it. I had survived worse. Slowly, I turned. My knees trembled. My hands shook as I walked to the bedroom. I opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside were the 2 real estate contracts and the 2 checks. I picked them up. One by one, I tore them into shreds. Piece after piece, the future I had once imagined, their future disappeared in my hands. If they had their father now, if they had their new mother now, then I had no reason to care anymore. From this moment on, I no longer have a son. I no longer have a daughter. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I walked into a law firm downtown. I sat across from a sharply dressed attorney, whose polite smile faltered slightly when he glanced at the documents I slid across the table. I want to draft a will, I said, my tone clear, firm, absolute. Upon my death, all of my assets are to be donated to charity. Every cent, every property, everything. I want it legally airtight. Neither of my children, nor any of their offspring, are to inherit so much as a penny. The lawyer blinked, sitting up straighter. Understood. That same afternoon, I drove to the real estate agency that had handled the purchase of Brandon and Sophie's home, the very home I had put under my name to help them secure the mortgage years ago. I still held full ownership. The agent smiled brightly when I walked in. Ms. Carter, welcome back. About the luxury villa. Cancel it. My voice was clipped, decisive. I won't be moving forward with the purchase. His expression faltered. Oh? Can I ask why? But I barely heard him. My mind had already traveled years back, revisiting a memory I now realized had been a warning I failed to heed. When Brandon married Sophie, I sold my old home, the one I'd purchased decades ago, for $60,000. Because of its location near a top school district, I'd managed to sell it for $250,000. I had intended that money as a down payment for Brandon and his wife's new house. But that wasn't enough for them. No, they wanted more. They eyed my savings account, my retirement fund, even suggested ever so sweetly, ever so casually, that I take out a mortgage in my name. Don't worry, Mom, Brandon had said back then, smiling like a salesman who believed his own pitch. You'll be on the deed. You'll technically own the house. It's safer this way. I wasn't stupid. I saw right through it. So I gave them a choice. Option 1. I pay the down payment. They handle the mortgage themselves. The deed stays under their names. Option 2. I take the mortgage under my name. The deed belongs solely to me. They can live in it. But when I pass, the house gets divided equally between Brandon and Sienna. They argued for days, fought, bargained, pleaded. In the end, they chose the second option. I should have realized back then. They didn't choose it because it was fair. They chose it because it cost them the least. And Sienna? She wasn't shortchanged either. I'd paid for her private university tuition, $155,000 a year. On top of that, during her 2-year gap after graduation, I fully supported her living expenses. Between rent, travel, and spending money, I must have poured at least another $100,000 into her pockets. Even now, her apartment rent, I was still paying it. I had believed naively, foolishly, that it was worth it, that when they grew up, they would understand, that they would remember everything I had given them. What a fool I was. I terminated the lease on my rental apartment. No longer was I going to live like some tenant in my own life. I bought myself a villa, a beautiful sunlit home, with a private garden, something I had never allowed myself before. For the first time in my life, I bought something just for me. A home for myself. I hired a housekeeper to help with the chores. I filled the garden with flowers, roses, hydrangeas, lavender. I planted vines to crawl up the trellis and shade the patio. I put wind chimes at the corner of the porch so the air would always sing to me. And for the first time in 66 years, I started living for myself. But peace never lasts long. The moment the for sale sign went up on Brandon's house, the phone calls started. First from Brandon. I blocked his number. Then from Sophie, his wife. I hesitated just a moment, then answered. The second the call connected, Brandon's voice exploded through the line. "Mom, what the hell are you doing? How could you send a lawyer and a realtor to our house? Are you out of your mind?" His entitlement oozed through every syllable. "You're seriously selling our home? Over what? Missing your birthday? You've really lost it this time. No wonder Dad left you. If I were him, I would have picked Vanessa too." His words hit me like daggers. But unlike years ago, they didn't draw blood. Instead, I laughed. A hollow, empty laugh. "Perfect," I said coldly. "Since you've chosen Vanessa, let her buy you a house. That home is legally mine. I'm selling it. You've got 3 weeks to pack up and leave. If you refuse, my lawyer will file for illegal occupancy." I paused. "Oh, and tell Sienna something for me. Her landlord's been asking about her next rent payment. She might want to look into that. I won't be covering it anymore." "You're crazy," Brandon screeched. "Absolutely insane. I hung up and blocked every number connected to them. Then I turned off my phone. Silence. Sweet, peaceful, beautiful silence. That weekend I visited a pet rescue center and adopted 2 cats. A gray tabby named Milo, and a soft orange puffball named Pumpkin. I filled my garden with new shrubs, spent hours choosing the perfect furniture for the sunroom, and bought shelves upon shelves of books. I woke up when I wanted. I cooked for myself. I sipped coffee on the patio, while the wind chimes sang above me, and for the first time since I was 24 years old, I was free. But of course, peace never stays for long. One afternoon, while I was trimming the lavender by the garden steps, my housekeeper came rushing out to the patio. "Ma'am, there are 2 police officers at the door. They said they need to speak with you." I blinked. Police? About what? My mind raced through possibility. Had something happened to a neighbor? An accident? I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the door, heart thudding, only to find 2 uniformed officers standing on my front step. "Ma'am, we received a missing person report filed by your son and daughter. They were concerned since they couldn't reach you for months. We're just checking to ensure you're safe." A hollow laugh nearly escaped my lips. "Missing person. Really?" I stepped aside. "As you can see, alive and well. Quite well." They nodded, apologized for the inconvenience, and right there in front of me, dialed Brandon. "Yes, sir. We've located your mother. She's safe. No cause for alarm." Yes, you can come by if you wish." I sighed. "You could have told them I'm not interested in visitors." The officer smiled awkwardly. "Unfortunately, ma'am, that's not part of our job description." An hour later, they showed up. Not just Brandon, not just Sienna, but someone I never expected. Henry, my older brother, the golden child, the apple of our parents' eyes, the spoiled, useless son who was lavished with everything in his youth, while I was simply an accessory to the family name. The 3 of them stood in my garden, their heads swiveling as they took in the villa, the landscaping, the modern patio furniture, the peaceful tranquility of a life that did not include them. For a long moment, nobody said a word. It was Sienna who broke the silence first. She looked around, frowning. "Mom, how much do you make as a housekeeper here? This place is huge." I blinked. "What?" She glanced toward the house. "I mean, it's beautiful, but does the owner really need a full-time housekeeper?" I stared at her for a full 3 seconds, then realization dawned. She thought I was the help. A bitter, humorless laugh bubbled up. "Sienna," I started softly. "This is my home. I own it. I live here. This is mine." Her eyes widened in disbelief. her mouth twitching like she wasn't sure whether to scoff or panic. Brandon let out a breath. No way. Mom, come on. This place must be worth, what, 1 million? 2? How? Where did you get the money? Oh, Brandon. If only you knew how insulting that question really was. I crossed my arms. What do you three want? You didn't come here to admire the landscaping. Speak, then leave. Brandon shoved his hands through his hair, exasperated. Mom, you've made your point, okay? Enough's enough. The lawyer actually filed a lawsuit against me over the house. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? His face turned red. Sophie's threatening divorce. I'm losing everything. Just call the lawyer and tell him to drop it. Please. There it was. Not an apology. Not regret. Not sorrow. Just fix this for me. I folded my arms tighter. If you move out within 3 days, I'll withdraw the lawsuit. Otherwise, no deal. He blinked, stunned, as if he couldn't believe I was serious. Before he could respond, Sienna stepped forward, brushing past him. She thrust out her hand like she was placing an order at a cafe. Mom, about the 100,000 you promised me for my wedding. I'll take it now. I stared. Excuse me. She sighed like she was explaining math to a toddler. Ethan and I just closed on our new home. We need money for renovations. You said you'd gift me 100 grand for my wedding. Remember? Well, now's the time. I blinked. Slowly, coldly. Oh, Sienna, your mother's name is Vanessa, not me. If you need help buying a home or planning a wedding, ask her. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Her face flushed red, part anger, part humiliation. You're seriously going to do this? She shrieked. After everything? After raising us? You think you can just cut us out? You think we won't remember this when you're old and miserable and alone? Don't expect us to come take care of you. We won't. You'll regret this. You'll regret all of it. She was shaking, hands balled into fists. Then with one final huff, she stormed toward the gate, dragging Emily behind her. Good luck with your cats. You bitter old woman. She spat as the gate slammed shut behind her. Her words should have hurt, but they didn't. Not anymore. I dusted off my hands like I was brushing dirt from my palms and turned toward the last person standing. Henry. My brother had watched the entire scene unfold like it was dinner theater. Amused, disgusted, calculated. He adjusted his belt and gave me that oily, familiar smile I remembered all too well from our childhood. Elliman, Mom and Dad miss you. You know, you should come visit. I raised a brow. Is that so? Because they didn't miss me when they kicked me out of the family after my divorce. Funny how that works. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. Look, Dad's not mad anymore. Divorce isn't a big deal these days. Look around. Half the city's doing it. Why hold a grudge? I tilted my head. You're not here for small talk. What do you want? He paused. The grin slipped. Then, like always, he dropped the facade. Dad took a fall last week. Doctors say he might end up bedridden. Mom's worried. We figured, maybe it's time you moved back in. Help out. Take care of them. Spend some quality time. I stared at him. The audacity. The absolute gall. Aren't you their favorite? I asked sweetly. The golden son? The one they spoiled rotten? You should be thrilled to step up. He bristled, scowling. Don't play dumb, Evelyn. You know they can't afford a live-in nurse. Their pensions barely cover anything after the taxes and bills. How am I supposed to survive if we waste money on caregivers? There it was. Not about love, not about family, just about the money. So let me get this straight, Henry, I said, voice smooth as silk. Dad is bedridden. Mom's frail. And what you're really saying is, you expect me to give up my life, my home, my peace, to take care of them. For free. So you can continue leeching off their pensions. His face darkened. It's your duty as a daughter. You're legally obligated. I already checked. If I file, a judge can force you to pay for their support. I smiled. Slow, icy, unshaken. Then sue me. His eyes widened. I stepped forward, close enough that he had to tilt his head back slightly. File the papers, Henry. I dare you. But until then, Not a single penny, not a single second of my time. Now, get out. I motioned toward the gate and watched as he stormed off, like the coward he always was. Unsurprisingly, Henry never filed the lawsuit. He wouldn't dare. It would require effort, actual work, and that had never been his specialty. Instead, he did what men like him always do. When the world doesn't bend to their will, he dumped our parents in a rundown nursing home on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, barely clean. Cheap enough that most of their pensions still flowed straight into his pockets. His only instruction to the staff: just make sure they don't die. That was it. No visits, no calls, just the bare minimum to keep the checks coming. For a while it was blissfully quiet. No more knocks on my door, no more entitled demands, no more voices dragging me backward into a life I had spent decades trying to escape. Until 2 months later, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize flashed on the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but something made me answer. A weak, slurred voice floated through the line. Belle. My breath hitched. No one had called me that in years. A childhood nickname long buried. It was my father. Belle. It's me. I don't have much time left, but there's something I need to say before I go. His breathing was labored, wheezing. Each word came in painful gasps, punctuated by long silences, like he was searching for the air to finish his sentences. I was wrong about a lot of things. About you. I'm sorry. I stood there, silent, the phone pressed against my ear, but I didn't reply. I didn't speak, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. This wasn't the grand, tearful cinematic apology you see in movies. It wasn't cathartic. It didn't stitch my wound shut or fill the hollow space where a father's love should have been. It was a wet, heavy, frozen coat draped over my shoulders in the dead of winter. Offered too late, doing nothing but reminding me of the cold I had endured alone for decades. I didn't want it. Before I could hang up, another voice broke in, frail, trembling. My mother. She whispered an address, a nursing home. Your father, he doesn't have much time left. If you want to come, say goodbye. My fingers hovered. For a long time I just stood there. Then, not for him, not for her, for me. When I arrived, the room was dim. My father lay in bed, skin gray and sunken, bones sharp beneath paper-thin flesh. His eyes were half-lidded, distant. The proud, booming man who once ruled our household like a tyrant was gone, replaced by a hollow shell. I hadn't seen him in over a decade, not since his 70th birthday, when I brought gifts, and he threw them out the front door without even opening them. He didn't speak when I entered. His lips trembled, his eyes filled, not with recognition, but with something else. Something hollow, something empty. I didn't speak either. I sat. 10 minutes passed. His breathing slowed, his chest rose, fell, until finally, it didn't. 2 murky tears slid down his withered face. I stood, turned, walked out. No final words, no goodbyes. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard shuffling footsteps behind me. I turned to find my mother, bent with age, her frame frail and small. Her hands trembled as she reached for me. For a moment, just for a second, I wondered if something had shifted. If maybe, but no. She was the same woman she had always been. Submissive, quiet, afraid of making waves, afraid of loving me enough to stand by me when it mattered. Her voice shook. The funeral. It won't be cheap. I stared. Then slowly, calmly, I reached into my purse, pulled out my checkbook, and wrote her a check for $10,000. For the funeral. I pressed it into her wrinkled hands. I won't be attending. Her mouth opened, like she might protest, but I didn't stay long enough to hear it. I walked away. The corridor swallowed the sound of her soft, broken sobs, and I didn't look back. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. For years I had dreamed of opening a little cafe bookstore, nothing grand, nothing flashy, just a quiet space filled with sunlight, the smell of roasted coffee, and the soft hum of pages being turned. So, I did it. I rented a 3,000 square foot space downtown. During renovations, I made sure every seat had its own power outlet. I filled the shelves with novels, poetry, history, cookbooks, every genre imaginable. The air smelled of freshly ground beans, vanilla, and sandalwood. I hired students, kids working part-time, and a few disabled adults who needed stable jobs. I didn't open this place to make millions. I opened it to give people a space to breathe, a space like the one I had never had. And people came, not just for coffee but for quiet, for comfort, for community. I named it the Paper Nest. It wasn't wildly profitable, but it paid the bills. It made just enough to break even, and more importantly, it made me happy. One day, while wiping down the front counter, I heard the chime above the door. I glanced up and froze. It was Sophie, Brandon's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, judging by the way she was holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, sharp suit, expensive watch. She saw me. Her eyes widened. For a moment she hesitated. Then, she let go of the man's hand. A beat passed, her lips pressed together. Then she let out a breath and shrugged. Brandon and I are in the middle of a divorce. She admitted, not bothering with pleasantries. Turns out, he's been seeing someone else. A woman Vanessa introduced him to, been going on for months. I blinked. Her boyfriend reached for her hand again, but this time, she didn't pull away. I nodded slowly. I see, she sighed. I'm not here to cause trouble. We'll go. I didn't stop them. I didn't say anything else. As they walked away, a quiet sigh escaped my lips. Brandon had finally become his father, and none of it surprised me. It didn't end there. When Sienna got married, I didn't receive an invitation, not even a polite text, not even a formality. Nothing. Instead, a mutual friend sent me a video, no message, just the video file, sitting in my inbox, heavy and silent like a stone. Curiosity, or maybe something darker, pushed me to open it. The image blinked to life. A wedding venue, elegant and extravagant, glittering chandeliers, cascading flowers, tables set with fine china, and there, walking down the aisle, arm in arm with David, was Sienna. But that wasn't what made my breath hitch. It was the woman sitting in the mother's seat, Vanessa, smiling, beaming, wearing the corsage meant for the mother of the bride. I watched her rise when the officiant asked the parents to stand, watched her hold David's hand, watched as she was honored, recognized, introduced to the guests as the bride's mother. A text followed the video, blinking at the bottom of my screen. Why is Vanessa sitting in the mother's seat? What's going on? I stared at it for a long moment, before typing back a simple reply. I suppose, I don't deserve to be there. The typing indicator popped up, flickered, then vanished. Nothing followed. Just silence. For a moment, something deep and old inside me stirred. Something bitter, something painful. But it didn't overwhelm me this time. No, something else was louder. Relief. The final chord snapped. Clean, sharp, final. Whatever fragile, broken connection might have remained was now gone. Ironically, that was around the time the paper nest started to flourish. Perhaps the universe had a strange sense of humor, or maybe it was poetic justice. Either way, business boomed. Local travel bloggers wrote glowing reviews. Influencers came, snapping photos of the cafe's rustic wooden shelves, sun-dappled reading nooks, and the cozy armchairs nestled by floor-to-ceiling windows. Customers praised the atmosphere, the drinks, the homemade pastries, the way time seemed to slow down the moment they walked through the door. My young employees, kind, bright, endlessly creative, suggested introducing monthly themed drinks. January, Golden Fortune Latte. February, Sweetheart Mocha. March, Literary Fusion Tea. And it worked. People loved it. There were days when the line stretched out the door. College students studying for exams, young mothers meeting for playdates, retired couples holding hands over cappuccinos. For once, I wasn't exhausted from serving people who only knew how to take. These people gave back, through smiles, through laughter, through their presence. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. It was inevitable, I suppose, that Sienna would eventually learn about the cafe. She came one chilly autumn afternoon, 7 months pregnant, her belly round beneath a beige trench coat. She walked in, ordered an iced Americano, and sat down at the counter. I recognized her the moment she stepped in. She looked different, worn, tired, older than her years. I nodded at the barista. Pour her a warm tea instead. No caffeine. When the drink slid in front of her, she didn't protest. She wrapped both hands around the mug, holding it as though she was afraid it might slip away. She stared down at the steam for a long, long time. Then, her lips trembled, and she broke. "Mom, I think I made a mistake." Her voice was small, fragile. The voice of a child. Not the hardened, distant woman who once told me I didn't deserve to be called her mother. I didn't answer. I simply waited. She took a shaky breath. Her fingers traced the rim of the cup. "Ethan, he cheated on me." Her eyes shimmered, brimming with unshed tears. "I'm 4 months pregnant, and the woman he's seeing, she's already about to give birth." The words hit the table like stones. He said he was busy with work, but really, he's been living with her this whole time. Last weekend, I drove 3 hours to surprise him. I caught them together. Her voice cracked. I pushed her, and he hit me. For a moment I sat there, unable to breathe. I had always thought Ethan was a mild, reliable man, polite, soft-spoken. I had believed he was the sort who would never raise his hand to anyone, but I was wrong. And perhaps, just like I had once been, Sienna had mistaken surface gentleness for goodness. I set my cup down carefully. My voice was cool, controlled. "Did you tell your father, or Vanessa?" Her eyes widened in disbelief. What? I sipped my coffee, let the bitterness coat my tongue. "Your father has connections. You should ask him for help. Or Vanessa. After all, she's the one who raised you these past few years. Surely, she'll stand up for you." Her hands trembled. Her lips parted. Tears spilled over her cheeks. "Mom, are you really abandoning me?" I stood, gently wiped the table in front of her. My voice never rose, never wavered. "You abandoned me first. You made that choice a long time ago. You don't get to come back now just because life has finally taught you how cruel it can be." I turned, took 3 steps, then paused, looked over my shoulder. "I told you before, a woman can live a good life on her own. You will be fine. Save yourself, Sienna. Nobody's coming." Time passed. The number of cats in my house grew. People kept abandoning them at the doorstep of the cafe. My housekeeper joked that I was running a cat sanctuary disguised as a coffee shop. The young people working for me, they were kind, thoughtful. Whenever I came in, someone greeted me with, "Good morning, Miss Carter," or "Your coffee's ready." It wasn't family, not really, but it was enough. It was warmth. It was peace. I had learned the hard way that sincerity is rare, that not every smile is real, not every hug is love. But that was okay, because now, I lived for myself. Life, however, has a way of reminding you that nothing stays peaceful forever, not even the scars you've carefully bandaged over time. News about David Carter reached me in the most unexpected way. It was a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on the balcony with Milo sprawled across my lap and Pumpkin nestled by my feet. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and amber. My housekeeper came upstairs, her brows knit with hesitation. "Ma'am, someone from the old neighborhood called. It's about Mr. Carter." I blinked, setting down my tea. "What about him?" "He had a stroke." For a moment, I didn't read. The words floated in the air like dust motes, weightless, meaningless. "Is he dead?" "No, ma'am. But close. Paralysis on one side, slurred speech, can't walk without assistance." I nodded once, slowly. "I see." It didn't spark joy, nor satisfaction, nor even sorrow, just emptiness. The inevitable finally arrived. Apparently David had been on his way to pick Vanessa up from the shopping mall when it happened. Collapsed right there in the parking lot. The damage was severe, permanent. For a while Vanessa stayed, hovered, supervised his treatment, managed the household. Until, of course, the bills started piling up. Rehabilitation, medication, caregivers, wheelchairs, equipment. It drained their savings dry in months. Then, one day, Vanessa quietly packed her bags, cleaned out the joint account, left David sitting in his wheelchair by the living room window. Her parting words, "I didn't sign up for this." Guess who ended up taking him in? Not his beloved Vanessa, not his siblings, not his friends. Brandon, the same son who had once parroted every cruel thing his father whispered behind my back. The same son who told me to stop drowning in my own bitterness. Turns out, bitterness was a survival skill, one he was about to learn firsthand. But poor Brandon had problems of his own. After Sophie left him, he had rushed into a new relationship, a woman Vanessa had introduced him to. Of course, young, pretty, opportunistic, and just as quickly she fled. When she realized that Brandon was no longer the son of a wealthy, well-connected father but a broke, overwhelmed man drowning in debt, and now saddled with the care of an angry, helpless, paralyzed old man. Poetic. Caring for David wasn't easy, bathing him, feeding him, changing his clothes, dragging him to doctor's appointments, listening to his slurred rants about how nothing would have turned out this way if it weren't for that woman, Evelyn. I heard from a neighbor that Brandon tried at first to beg for help from Sienna, but Sienna was no longer the woman she had once been. After divorcing Ethan, the moment her son was born, she packed her bags, left the city and moved far away. Somewhere quiet, somewhere where no one knew her, where no one remembered her past. Life was hard, raising a child alone, balancing rent, child care, work. But for the first time in her life, she began to understand. The long nights when I stayed up rocking her to sleep, the winters when my fingers went raw scrubbing her clothes by hand because we couldn't afford a washing machine, the aching exhaustion that never quite faded, no matter how much coffee or determination fueled it. She remembered everything. At first, she hesitated. But then, one night, as the clock ticked past midnight, she pulled out her phone and typed, "Mom, how have you been?" No reply. Weeks later, "I'm sorry for everything." Silence. Then again, "I understand now. Everything you did for us. I never realized how tired you must have been. I don't expect you to reply. I just wanted you to know. I think about you." Still, silent. She sent messages every few months. Gentle, honest. No longer the sharp, defensive, prideful words of the past. I read every single one, but I never replied. Some wounds, once cut too deep, never fully close. But that didn't mean I wished her misery. No, if anything, I hoped that one day she would truly learn how to stand on her own, not for a man, not for a father, not for anyone else's approval, just for herself. As for me, my cafe thrived. My home was filled with laughter, not the laughter of family but of friends, employees, customers. My cats lounged in sunbeams. My garden bloomed in every season. I woke up when I wanted. I traveled when I pleased. No one told me what to do. No one drained me. No one demanded my life in exchange for love that never really existed. I had been betrayed, abandoned, hurt, used, but I survived. And now, I lived. For myself. The seasons passed, one bleeding quietly into the next. Life, as it tends to do, softened at the edges. I spent my mornings sipping coffee on the patio, Milo curled on the windowsill, pumpkins sprawled lazily by the garden steps. The afternoons were filled with the gentle hum of espresso machines, the murmurs of customers, the smell of books mingling with roasted coffee beans inside the paper nest. It was a life that, for the first time, felt entirely mine. Uncomplicated, free, no obligations, no shackles dressed up as family ties. Just peace. I no longer needed anyone's approval, no longer yearned for the love I had spent my entire life begging for. And yet, life still had its little ways of nudging me, whispering, Look, Evelyn. Look how far you've come. One chilly winter morning, I was arranging a new stack of novels on the front display when a familiar figure walked through the door. It was Sienna. She wasn't the same woman I remembered, the woman who once sat in my living room, coldly telling me to let the past go while asking for $100,000. No, this woman looked smaller. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale, dark circles blooming beneath her lashes. She wore no makeup, her once meticulously styled hair tied into a loose, uneven bun. She looked worn, exhausted, human. Her son, my grandson, clung tightly to her hand, a quiet little boy with wide eyes and a mop of messy hair. His other hand gripped a well-loved toy airplane. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us knew how. Then, in a voice so small it nearly disappeared into the air, Sienna said, "Mom, this is Aiden. He's your grandson." The boy looked up at me, uncertain but curious. His little lips parted. "Hi, Grandma." I blinked. Something twisted inside my chest, tight, unfamiliar. Before I could answer, Sienna's voice wavered. I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. Not anymore. I thought, maybe you'd want to meet him. Just once. That's all." She knelt, smoothing the boy's jacket. "Say goodbye, Aiden. Let's go. Grandma's busy." But before he could turn away, I heard my own voice, soft, steady, not entirely planned. "Wait. Sit. Have something warm. It's cold outside." She froze. Slowly, cautiously, she nodded. I motioned to a corner table by the window, one of the cozy ones, the seat I often saved for myself when the afternoons were slow. I told the barista, 2 hot chocolates, extra marshmallows, and a chamomile tea, on me. For the next half hour, we sat. It wasn't like the movies. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no sudden embrace, no confessions spilling out all at once. It was quiet, tentative. "How old is he?" I asked. "5, she whispered. "And how are you?" Her lips trembled. "Surviving." A pause. Then, with a bitter chuckle, "Turns out, surviving is harder than I ever realized." I nodded. "Yes, it is." We sat in that fragile, trembling peace, a space where the past hovered in the air but for a brief moment wasn't quite heavy enough to crush us. When the drinks arrived, Aiden's eyes lit up at the mountain of marshmallows floating in his cup. "This is the best hot chocolate ever," he whispered, as if confessing a secret. I smiled. A real one. Small, fragile, but real. When they left, Sienna paused at the door. Her hands fumbled, then reached out, just a little, before falling back to her sides. "Thank you for the hot chocolate. And for not slamming the door in my face. I wouldn't have blamed you if you did." I nodded, watched them go. And as the door swung shut, I whispered, not for her to hear, but for me, "Learn to save yourself this time. You'll be fine." More seasons passed. The cafe became a little community of its own. Students came and went, growing from nervous freshmen into confident graduates. Elderly couples spent lazy afternoons by the window. Young parents read to toddlers in the reading nook. My shelves overflowed with thank you notes, handmade crafts and photos from customers who had long since become something more like family. The cats, Milo, Pumpkin, and now 2 others I'd adopted, ruled the cafe like tiny benevolent kings. Customers often came in just to see them. There were lonely days, sure, but never empty ones. And as for the people who once weighed me down, David Carter, the man who believed the world would always bend for him, lived out his days in a dingy little apartment, forgotten, a burden nobody wanted. Even Brandon, bitter and resentful, only visited out of obligation. The proud, cruel man who once threw me away like trash, now couldn't even lift a spoon without help. Vanessa? No one had seen her in years. She disappeared like smoke, vanishing the moment the money dried up. Brandon's life unraveled in quiet, pitiful ways. His second marriage ended. His debts piled higher. His resentment grew heavier. He too had become his father's son, exactly what he once believed he'd never be. Poetic, cruel, just. And me? I was free, free in a way they would never understand, free in a way they would never taste, free in a life I had built, brick by brick, out of every broken piece they left behind. I had spent a lifetime giving, giving, until there was nothing left. Now, I chose joy, no regrets, no apologies, just the soft hum of espresso machines, the turning of pages, the purr of cats in the sunlight, and the steady, quiet heartbeat of a woman who had finally learned how to live. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is choosing yourself. After a lifetime of sacrifice, betrayal, and heartbreak, Evelyn realized that true freedom comes when you stop seeking validation from those who never valued you. Her journey teaches us that no matter how late, it's never too late to reclaim your happiness, set boundaries, and live life on your own terms. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and support this channel so we can share more inspiring stories. Comment below and let me know which region or country are you watching from.